All right, today we are doing square root inverses, square root function inverses. We have done inverses before. It's the same steps, okay? It says the inverse of a function f is written as f minus 1. We know that. The inverse of a function is the reflection over the line y equals x. And then it says the inverse of a square root function is a quadratic function with restrictions. These are the steps. We did this for linear and parabolas, I think. Okay? It's literally the same steps. It might sound familiar. It should sound familiar. Step 1, replace f of x with y. Step 2, switch x and y. Remember when we're doing inverse tables and I said you switch x and y? You do the same thing. Then it says solve for y. And then rewrite y as f of negative 1x. That's it. Okay, so number one, we see f of x equals the square root of x. That's the parent function. This is all we do. We rewrite f of x as y equals square root of x. Okay, then we switch x and y. So x equals square root of y. All right, then we solve for y. How do we solve for y for this one? We need to get y by itself. Right now it's under a square root symbol. What's the opposite of square root? We're going to square it to cancel those out. But what you do to one side, you have to do the other. So we're going to square it. So x squared equals y. Y is by itself. Okay? So we solve for y. Y equals x squared. Now for our final answer, all we do is just instead of writing y, we're going to write f of negative 1 x equals x squared, and we're done. And remember, like I said, inverse is usually the exact opposite. Okay, sometimes there's a couple extra weird circumstances where it's not the exact opposite. Okay, but remember, if the original equation is 2x, usually the inverse is x divided by 2. So erase the steps. You should have had those by now. If we see the original equation is f of x equals the square root of x, what's the opposite of square root? Squared. What's the answer? X squared. So we go from the square root of x with the inverse being x squared, which is the opposite. So that's a little way to make sure you're doing it right. Okay? Scroll down. We see number 2. Let me actually zoom in a little bit. Okay. Let me get some more room here. All right. So we have number 2. F of x equals the square root of x, but this time there's a minus 5 on the outside. So what do we do first? Rewrite that as y equals the square root of x minus 5. Then we're going to switch x and y. So x equals square root of y minus 5. Then we're going to solve for y. First thing, we need to get y by itself. So plus 5, x plus 5, all right, equals the square root of y. I hope you're still following me, okay? Then what do we need to do to get this square root gone? We're going to square it. Always do that. But then what we do to one side, we must do to the other. So squared. So I'm going to continue on up here at the top. So we have y equals x plus 5 squared. All right, then our last step, we just write y is f of negative 1 x, f of negative 1 x equals x plus 5 squared. And we're done. And again, looking at the original equation, it was the square root of x minus 5, and the inverse is x plus 5 squared. Okay, so the opposite. This should not be hard. This should be really easy. Just switch x and y, solve for y, and your answer, to make sure you're doing it right, you know it should be the opposite, okay? Now number 3, there's a little bit of an extra step. As you can see, under the square root, there's a number as well. It's not just x like 1 and 2, it's x plus 6. So we gotta see how that's gonna work out. So follow along. Switch this with y, okay? I'm actually gonna start it up here just to save some room. All right, so we have y equals square root of x plus 6, and then on the outside we have plus 2. Again, switch x and y, so x equals square root of y plus 6, and then on the outside plus 2. Now we're going to solve for y, okay? So obviously first step, minus 2, x minus 2 equals the square root of y plus 6, okay? Right here is where we have to square both sides, okay? And then now we have x minus 2 squared equals y plus 6. Now here you might think, oh, well, I'll just move 6 over, you know, like subtract 6, and then move it over here, and the answer is x minus 2 squared plus 6. It's not as simple as that. We actually have to do x minus 2 times x minus 2. We actually have to work this out to see what we're left with. Then we're going to move the 6 over, okay? So all we're doing is factoring this out. So we know it's x minus 2 squared, so we're going to multiply to see what we have on that side, okay? So x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x minus 2 more x, and then plus 4. All right, and then we're going to combine like terms. So that's x squared minus 4x plus 4. And all of that is equal to y plus 6. Now is when we can subtract the 6. If you need to go back, please do it. But remember, I did all the steps. I'm going to say it again at the end. All right, minus 6, minus 6. Our final answer, I'm going to write it right here, is f of negative 1x equals x squared minus 4x minus 2, because here I did positive 4 minus 6, and that gives us negative 2. Okay, so this is our final answer. If you got confused on where I got that, remember, it's not for number 2. I'm just writing it over here. If you got confused on where I got that, you can go back and watch it. But again, starting with number 3, I made f of x, y, then starting up here, y equals square root of x plus 6, and then on the outside plus 2. I know immediately I need to move the 2 over, so it should be x minus 2 equals x minus 2 equals the square root of y plus 6. Then I know to get rid of the square root, I need to square it, because the square of the square root, they cancel out. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So we have x minus 2 squared equals y plus 6. But it's not as simple as just moving the 6 over and saying our answer is x minus 2 squared minus 6. We have to actually factor it out. That's what I'm doing here. X minus 2 squared means x minus 2 times x minus 2. So I do all that distribution here, okay? Then I see I'm left with x squared minus 2x plus 4. Combine like terms, I have x squared minus 4x plus 4, okay? Then I see that's equal to y plus 6, and that's when I can move the 6 over. So minus 6, left with just y, and then 4 minus 6 is negative 2. So our final answer is right here, which is f of negative 1x equals x squared minus 4x minus 2. Okay, if you need to rewatch the video, go back. Okay, it shouldn't be too bad. Same steps. Replace f of x with y, switch x and y, solve for y, and rewrite y as f of negative 1x. Here, again, I squared it because that's the opposite of square root. Tomorrow, when we do cube root, if it's a cube root inverse, we have to cube it to get rid of it, okay? Shouldn't be too bad.